The moment their eyes met across the sand, Mark knew something had shifted in his universe. But it wasn't until she spoke those 7 words that his heart completely surrendered. If you've ever believed in fate's perfect timing, this story will remind you why some connections are worth waiting for. Stay with me until the end to discover how a chance meeting changed 2 broken lives forever. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more real-life love stories that prove second chances exist when we least expect them. Mark Sullivan stared at the stack of bills on his kitchen counter, the familiar knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. 3 years as a single dad had taught him to manage impossible situations, but lately, the weight felt crushing. His daughter Emma's 7th birthday was next week, and he'd promised her a special celebration this year. A promise he wasn't sure he could keep. The marketing firm where he worked had been struggling, and rumors of layoffs circulated through cubicles like a virus. As a mid-level graphic designer who'd missed deadlines due to Emma's recent bout with pneumonia, Mark knew his position was vulnerable. His new boss, Victoria Chen, had been brought in 6 months ago to streamline operations, corporate speak that everyone understood meant cuts were coming. Victoria had a reputation for being brilliant but ruthless. In their limited interactions, she'd been coolly professional, her dark eyes revealing nothing as she reviewed his work. Mark had caught glimpses of her commanding meetings, her sleek black hair pulled into a tight bun, designer clothes impeccable. She was everything he wasn't: polished, confident, unencumbered. The employees called her Ice Queen behind her back, though Mark had always felt uncomfortable with the nickname. "Daddy, can we go to the beach tomorrow? Please." Emma's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She stood in the doorway of their small apartment kitchen, clutching the stuffed penguin that hadn't left her side since her mother's death. Mark glanced at the bills again, then at his daughter's hopeful face. The beach was free, and they both needed a break. "Sure, sweetheart. Beach day it is." Emma's smile was worth every worry. After tucking her in that night, Mark sat alone in the living room, scrolling through job listings on his laptop. If the axe fell at work, he needed a backup plan. Emma deserved stability, deserved better than the constant struggle. Sometimes, in his darkest moments, he wondered if she'd have been better off if Laura had survived instead of him. The next morning dawned surprisingly bright for early spring. They arrived at the beach early, claiming a quiet spot away from where crowds would gather later. Emma raced toward the water's edge, her laughter carried back to him on the breeze. "Not too far," he called, spreading their faded beach blanket on the sand. The ocean had always been their special place. Laura had loved it here too. Mark was building a sandcastle with Emma when he noticed a woman walking along the shoreline. Something about her solitary figure caught his attention, the way she paused occasionally to look out at the horizon, how the wind played with her loose dark hair. There was a grace to her movements that seemed familiar. It wasn't until she turned slightly that recognition hit him like a physical blow. Victoria Chen. Here, on their beach, miles from the office. Gone was the severe bun and designer suit. Instead, she wore simple shorts and a loose cotton shirt, her hair falling in natural waves past her shoulders. Without the trappings of corporate authority, she looked younger, softer somehow. Mark ducked his head, irrationally hoping she wouldn't notice them. The last thing he needed was an awkward encounter with the woman who might fire him on Monday. "Daddy, I'm hungry," Emma announced, patting her sand-covered hands on her swimsuit. "Let's get you cleaned up first, kiddo." He helped her rinse her hands in the water they'd brought, then reached for the cooler. "Is that a peanut butter sandwich?" Emma asked, peering into the container he opened. "Your favorite. Peanut butter and banana, crusts cut off, just how you like it." Emma wrinkled her nose. "I don't like peanut butter anymore." Mark sighed. "Since when?" "Since yesterday. Lily at school said peanut butter is for babies." "Well, it's what we have today," Mark said, trying to keep the frustration from his voice. "Just try a few bites, okay?" Emma's lower lip trembled, the precursor to a meltdown he knew all too well. Before he could negotiate further, a shadow fell across their blanket. "Excuse me," said a voice he instantly recognized, though it sounded different here, warmer, less clipped. "I couldn't help overhearing. I have an extra turkey sandwich if that would help." Mark looked up, squinting against the sun to see Victoria Chen standing beside their blanket, holding out a neatly wrapped sandwich. Up close, without makeup, he noticed the light dusting of freckles across her nose, the warm brown of her eyes that office lighting had always made appear black. "Ms. Chen," he managed, scrambling to his feet. We wouldn't want to impose. Please, it's Victoria outside the office." She smiled, and it transformed her face entirely. "And it's no imposition. I always pack too much food, habit from growing up with 3 brothers who ate everything in sight." Emma, suddenly shy, pressed against Mark's leg. Victoria crouched down to her level, still holding out the sandwich. "Hi there. I'm Victoria. What's your name?" "Emma," came the whispered reply. "Emma, that's a beautiful name. I have this extra sandwich, and it would make me very happy if you would have it. It's turkey with a little bit of honey mustard. My niece says it's the best sandwich in the world, but I'd like your expert opinion." Emma giggled, her shyness evaporating. "I can be an expert." "I knew you looked like an expert sandwich taster," Victoria said seriously, handing it over. She straightened, meeting Mark's gaze. "She's wonderful." "Thank you," Mark said, feeling oddly vulnerable. "For the sandwich and the compliment. Would you like to join us?" The invitation slipped out before he could consider its wisdom. "I mean, if you're not busy or—" "I'd like that," Victoria said simply, surprising him. "If you're sure I'm not intruding on your father-daughter time." "Daddy, can she stay? Please?" Emma asked, already unwrapping the sandwich. And so Victoria Chen, terror of the marketing department, kicked off her sandals and sat cross-legged on their beach blanket, sharing their simple picnic as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The conversation flowed with unexpected ease. Victoria asked Emma questions about school and listened with genuine interest to rambling answers about favorite colors and playground politics. When Emma ran off to collect shells, leaving the adults alone, an awkward silence threatened to descend. "She looks like you," Victoria said, watching Emma at the water's edge. "Same smile." "Everyone says she's the image of her mother," Mark replied, surprised. Victoria shook her head. "Maybe in coloring, but that smile is all yours. The one that lights up your whole face." She paused, then added softly, "The one we rarely see at the office." Mark felt heat rise to his cheeks, unsure how to respond to this personal observation from his boss. "Work hasn't given me much reason to smile lately," he admitted, then immediately regretted the honesty. Victoria's expression grew serious. "I know. The company's been struggling for a while. Before I came on board. Are the layoff rumors true?" The question escaped before he could stop it. She looked at him for a long moment. "This isn't a conversation we should have here, Mark. I understand. I shouldn't have asked." He looked away, watching Emma arrange shells in patterns on the wet sand. "What I can tell you," Victoria continued unexpectedly, "is that I've been reviewing everyone's work carefully. Including yours." Mark's stomach tightened. "I know I've missed some deadlines recently. Emma was sick, and you're raising her alone," Victoria finished for him. "I'm aware of your situation." Of course she was. HR would have all the details in his file. Single father, widower, financial struggles. All the red flags that made him a liability in corporate eyes. "The Westfield campaign," she said, changing direction. "That was your concept, wasn't it?" Mark nodded cautiously. The Westfield campaign had been one of his better ideas, though Johnson had taken most of the credit during the presentation. I thought so. It had your signature style, simple but emotionally resonant. She looked out at the ocean. You have a gift for understanding what moves people, Mark. It's rare in our industry. The compliment caught him off guard. Thank you. I lost my father when I was 8, Victoria said suddenly. My mother raised 4 of us on her own. I know what Emma's going through, at least a little. The personal revelation stunned him. In 6 months, he'd never heard Victoria mention anything about her private life. I'm sorry, he said, meaning it. It's not easy for kids. No, it's not. But having one parent who loves you fiercely makes all the difference. She met his eyes. Emma is lucky to have you. Those 7 words, Emma is lucky to have you, hit Mark with unexpected force. In 3 years of single parenthood, through all the doubts and struggles and midnight fears, no one had ever said that to him. Everyone offered sympathy, advice, or help, but no one had ever simply affirmed that his love for his daughter was enough, that he was enough. Something shifted between them in that moment, a connection forming that had nothing to do with office hierarchies or professional boundaries. For the first time since Laura died, Mark felt truly seen. Emma returned then, arms full of shells and stories, breaking the moment. Victoria listened to her excited chatter, helping her sort through her treasures with the patience of someone who genuinely enjoyed children's company. As the afternoon wore on, Mark found himself studying Victoria when she wasn't looking, the way sunlight caught in her hair, how her laugh came easily outside the office, the gentle way she spoke to Emma. This woman bore little resemblance to the intimidating executive he thought he knew. When it was time to leave, Emma insisted on giving Victoria her favorite shell, a perfect spiral with hints of pink inside. Victoria accepted it with such genuine delight that Emma beamed. Thank you for sharing your beach day with me, Victoria said as they packed up. It's been the best Saturday I've had in a long time. We come most weekends, weather permitting, Mark heard himself saying. You'd be welcome to join us again. Something flickered in Victoria's eyes, surprise, perhaps, or pleasure. I'd like that. They parted ways in the parking lot, Victoria heading toward a modest sedan that seemed at odds with her executive salary. Mark watched her go, feeling as though something important had just happened, though he couldn't quite define what. Monday morning arrived with the usual chaos of getting Emma ready for school and himself prepared for work. As he entered the office building, Mark felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. Would Victoria acknowledge their beach encounter, or would she revert to the cool professionalism that defined their workplace relationship? He needn't have worried. By the time he reached his desk, an email was waiting from Victoria Chen, requesting his presence in her office at 10 a.m. The message was brief and professional, giving no hint of their Saturday interaction. Mark spent the next 2 hours alternating between focused work and anxious speculation. Was this the layoff conversation? Had he crossed a line by inviting her to join them again? At precisely 10 a.m., he knocked on her office door. Come in, called the familiar voice, now tinged with the warmth he'd heard at the beach. Victoria sat behind her desk, hair once again in its severe bun, dressed in a charcoal suit that screamed authority. Yet when she looked up, her smile was genuine. Mark, thank you for coming. Please, sit down. He took the chair across from her, noticing for the first time a small object on her otherwise immaculate desk, Emma's pink spiraled shell. I wanted to speak with you about your role here, Victoria began, her tone professional but not cold. As you know, we're making some organizational changes. Mark's heart sank. Here it came. The creative department needs stronger leadership, she continued. Someone who understands both the technical aspects of design and the emotional core of what makes campaigns connect with people. He nodded, preparing himself for the blow. I'd like to offer you the position of creative director. Mark stared at her, certain he'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? Victoria's smile widened slightly. Creative director. Johnson is leaving for a position with our competitors, and I need someone with vision to take his place. Your work shows a depth of understanding that's rare, Mark. The company needs that perspective, especially now. But my missed deadlines, the time off for Emma. You've managed to produce exceptional work despite personal challenges that would break most people, Victoria interrupted. Imagine what you could do with proper support and resources. Mark struggled to process what she was saying. This would be a significant promotion. Yes, with a corresponding salary increase and more flexible hours. The role would require some evening work, but you could do much of it from home after Emma is asleep. She leaned forward slightly. I designed the position with your situation in mind, Mark. The company needs your talent, but I understand that Emma needs her father. The thoughtfulness behind the offer stunned him. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Victoria replied simply. We can work out the details together. Yes, Mark said, feeling as though he'd stepped into someone else's life. Absolutely yes. Good. Victoria's professional demeanor softened slightly. There's something else I wanted to discuss, but it's of a more personal nature. Mark waited, curious. Your invitation to join you and Emma at the beach again, was that genuine, or just politeness? The question caught him off guard. It was genuine. Emma hasn't stopped talking about you and that magic sandwich since Saturday. Victoria laughed, the sound as free and warm as it had been on the beach. I'm glad. Because I'd very much like to take you up on it. She hesitated, then added, but I think we should be clear about something, Mark. If we're going to spend time together outside of work, with your daughter involved, we need to establish some boundaries. Of course, Mark agreed, suddenly worried he'd misread the situation entirely. I'm your boss here, Victoria continued, gesturing to the office around them. That won't change. But outside these walls, I'd like the chance to get to know you, both of you, without those roles defining us. Is that something you'd be comfortable with? The careful way she phrased it, respecting both professional ethics and his position as Emma's father, only increased Mark's growing admiration for her. I'd like that very much, he said honestly. Victoria nodded, looking pleased. Then I'll see you Saturday? Same spot? We'll be there. As Mark left her office, he felt lighter than he had in years. The promotion would ease their financial struggles, but it was the prospect of seeing Victoria again, of exploring whatever was developing between them, that filled him with unexpected hope. The week passed in a blur of new responsibilities and excited planning with Emma for their beach day. By the time Saturday arrived, Mark found himself checking his appearance in the mirror more carefully than usual, wondering when he'd started caring again about such things. Victoria arrived at the beach just as they were setting up their blanket. This time, she brought a kite for Emma and homemade cookies that disappeared quickly between the three of them. The day unfolded with the easy rhythm of people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. When Emma fell asleep on the blanket after hours of playing, exhausted from sun and excitement, Mark and Victoria walked along the shoreline, talking in low voices. Thank you for the promotion, Mark said. The flexible schedule has already made a huge difference for us. Victoria nodded. The team respects you. The transition has been smoother than I expected. Can I ask you something? Mark ventured after a moment. Why did you come to the beach that day? This beach, specifically. Victoria was quiet for so long that he thought she might not answer. Finally, she said, my father used to bring us here when I was a child. After he died, my mother was too busy working to continue the tradition. She looked out at the horizon. I started coming again a few months ago, after my divorce was finalized. It helps me remember who I am outside of work, outside of failed relationships. I'm sorry about your divorce, Mark said softly. Victoria shrugged. Don't be. Richard wanted a corporate wife, someone to host dinner parties and look decorative at company events. When I was promoted above him, the marriage became inconvenient for his ego. She glanced at Mark. "What about you? Do you date much?" The question was asked casually, but Mark sensed its importance. "No. Between work and Emma, there hasn't been time. Or maybe those were just excuses." He paused. "Laura was my college sweetheart. After she died, the idea of starting over with someone new seemed impossible. Like a betrayal, somehow." Victoria nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Grief doesn't follow a timeline. Neither does healing." "Emma asks about dating sometimes," Mark admitted. "She saw a movie where a single dad found a new mom for his daughter. She asked if I would find her a new mom someday." "What did you tell her?" Victoria's voice was gentle. "That if someone special ever came into our lives, it wouldn't be about finding her a new mom. It would be about finding someone who made our family feel more complete, not someone to replace what we lost." Mark kicked at the sand. "I'm not sure she understood." "I think that was a beautiful answer," Victoria said. "And very wise." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the waves washing over their feet. "When I saw you that first day on the beach," Victoria finally said, "I almost turned around and left. I was afraid it would be awkward, that you'd think I was checking up on you outside of work." "What made you stay?" Victoria smiled. "Emma. The way she looked at you when you were building that sandcastle together. And then when I heard you trying so hard to make that peanut butter sandwich work." She laughed softly. "I saw a father who would do anything for his daughter. It was impossible to walk away." The weeks that followed fell into a pattern. Saturdays at the beach became their tradition. Sometimes they'd venture to a nearby pier for ice cream, or explore tide pools with Emma. Victoria proved to be surprisingly knowledgeable about marine life, teaching Emma the names of creatures they discovered among the rocks. At work, they maintained professional boundaries, though Mark noticed the office gossip had already begun. He ignored it, focusing instead on proving himself worthy of the promotion Victoria had given him. One rainy Sunday afternoon, 2 months after their first beach encounter, Victoria came to their apartment for dinner. Emma had begged to show Victoria her room and her growing collection of seashells. Mark had been nervous about the invitation. Their apartment was small and modestly furnished, nothing like the sleek condo he imagined Victoria owned. But Victoria arrived with a board game for Emma and ingredients to cook together, slipping into their home life as if she'd always been part of it. After Emma went to bed, they sat on the couch with glasses of wine, talking late into the night about everything and nothing, childhood memories, favorite books, dreams deferred. "I never thought I'd feel this comfortable with anyone again," Mark confessed as the evening grew late. "After Laura died, I built this wall around Emma and me. It felt safer that way." Victoria's eyes were soft in the dim light. "And now? Now I'm wondering if we've been missing something important by staying behind that wall." He set his wine glass down, gathering courage. "Victoria, I need to be honest about something." She waited, her expression open but guarded. "I'm falling in love with you," he said simply. "And it terrifies me." Victoria's breath caught. For a moment, she was perfectly still. Then she reached out, her fingers gently touching his face. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because I've lost someone I loved before. Because you're Emma's boss and my boss, and if this goes wrong, it complicates everything. Because Emma adores you, and if you disappeared from her life." He shook his head. "But mostly because I never expected to feel this way again, and now that I do, I'm afraid of how much it matters." Victoria moved closer, her eyes never leaving his. "When my marriage ended, I convinced myself that love wasn't for me. That I was better off focusing on my career, on measurable achievements. Then I met you and Emma on that beach, and you said something that day that I can't forget." "What was that?" Mark asked, genuinely curious. "You told Emma that the sandcastle didn't need to be perfect, it just needed to be built with love. You said imperfect things made with love are always more beautiful than perfect things without it. Victoria smiled. I'd spent my whole life trying to be perfect, Mark. Perfect daughter, perfect student, perfect executive. And I was lonely. So lonely. She took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. I'm falling in love with you too. With both of you. And yes, it's complicated and messy and probably breaks a dozen HR policies. But for the first time in my life, I don't want perfect. I want real. When they kissed, it felt like coming home to a place Mark had forgotten existed. Not the passionate rush of youth, but something deeper, a recognition, a belonging. Their relationship evolved with careful consideration for Emma. Victoria became a regular presence in their lives, but they moved slowly, making sure Emma understood that Victoria wasn't trying to replace her mother. To their relief, Emma blossomed under Victoria's attention, often asking when Ms. Vicky would visit next. 6 months after their first beach meeting, Mark took Victoria back to the same spot where they'd met. Emma was having a sleepover with a friend, giving them a rare evening alone. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Mark reached into his pocket. I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment, he said, pulling out a small shell, similar to the one Emma had given Victoria that first day, but with this one carefully polished and hanging from a delicate silver chain. It's not a ring. Not yet. I think we still have more road to travel before that step. Victoria took the necklace, running her finger over the smooth spiral of the shell. But I wanted you to have something that symbolizes where we began, Mark continued. And my promise that whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Victoria's eyes shimmered with tears as she turned so he could fasten the necklace around her neck. When she faced him again, her smile was radiant. Do you know what I thought that first day, when I saw you with Emma? She asked, her hand covering the shell now resting against her heart. I thought, there's a man who knows what matters. And then when we talked, when you invited me into your world without hesitation, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, possibility. She took his hands in hers. I don't know what the future holds for us, Mark. But I know that loving you and Emma has made me more myself than I've ever been. And whatever road we travel, I want to walk it with both of you. As the last light faded from the sky, they sat together on the sand, talking about dreams that now seemed possible, a house near the beach, family dinners, holidays together, the everyday miracles of shared life. Not perfect, but real. Not without challenges, but faced together. 1 year to the day after their first meeting, Mark proposed properly, with Emma's enthusiastic blessing. 6 months after that, they married in a simple ceremony on the same beach where it all began. Emma served as both flower girl and ring bearer, beaming with pride as she watched her father and Victoria exchange vows. In his vows, Mark spoke the words that had changed everything. You saw me when I felt invisible. You told me Emma was lucky to have me when I doubted everything about myself. You didn't try to fix our broken places, you simply showed us that being broken doesn't mean being incomplete. Victoria, the woman once known as the Ice Queen, wiped tears as she promised to love both Mark and Emma for all her days. You taught me that the most beautiful things in life aren't perfect or polished, she said. They're built with love, one day at a time, like sandcastles on the shore. Life wasn't suddenly perfect. They still faced challenges, merging households, navigating their professional relationship, helping Emma through moments of grief for the mother she barely remembered. But they faced each challenge together, with the strength that comes from knowing you are truly seen and loved. 5 years after that fateful day on the beach, Mark sat watching Victoria and Emma collecting shells at the water's edge. Emma, now 12, had grown tall and confident, her laughter carrying on the breeze. Victoria, her professional armor long since shed on these family beach days, wore the shell necklace he'd given her, never taking it off even after it was joined by a wedding ring. Dad! Vicky found a sand dollar. Emma called, waving him over. As Mark joined his family at the water's edge, he marveled at how life's most profound changes could begin with the simplest moments: a borrowed sandwich, 7 honest words, the courage to open a heart long closed. Sometimes love arrives when we least expect it, on an ordinary beach on an ordinary day, disguised as a simple act of kindness. And sometimes, if we're brave enough to recognize it, that love becomes the extraordinary foundation upon which we build the rest of our lives. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more tales of unexpected love and second chances. Remember that healing and new beginnings can find us anywhere, even on a sunny beach when we least expect them. Sometimes the words that change our lives forever are the ones that simply acknowledge the truth we've been waiting to hear. Thank you for reading. I hope you enjoyed this love story about Mark, Emma, and Victoria. Their journey reminds us that sometimes the most meaningful connections happen when we least expect them, and that healing and new beginnings can find us in the most ordinary places. The story shows how vulnerability, understanding, and genuine care can transform lives, whether it's through recognizing someone's worth with simple words or having the courage to open your heart again after loss. Is there anything specific about the story you particularly liked or any other type of content you'd be interested in?